Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Trusted Tech Talks podcast. I'm your host, Aiden Pople. I'm a senior software consultant at Maxwell and a co-host at Trusted Tech Talks. This week, I'm joined by Liam Jones, a senior contract software engineer, to discuss cross-training from Angular to React. Liam, would you like to explain your background and introduce yourself? I don't feel like I can do you justice, pal.
I'm not sure about that, but so I've been contracting for close to 10 years, I think now. Started out as a permie in the games industry, sort of moved out of that when I found that business logic is a bit more rewarding, both intellectually and financially. Haven't really looked back since, mostly doing full stack development these days.
Cool. So the topic today is why our company's moving over to React. So we'll dive straight into it. Liam, why are companies moving to React?
It's a really good question. I think it's important to preface that with saying that no one is thinking that any of the primary competitors to React are particularly bad in any way. Angular's the first one that pops into mind. Like, I actually cut my teeth on Angular doing that style of front-end development, and I rate it highly as a library. I think that the reason why a lot of companies are preferring to move to React is there's a small handful of reasons, and the primary one I think is speed. And I think that most companies will value speed over almost anything else. So speed to market, releasing features, and just getting what businesses or what management tend to feel is the most important thing, and delivering new features and product value. With Angular, what that gives you, Angular gives you a lot of safety insofar as it limits the amount of rope that a developer has in order to stop them from hanging themselves. And React is a lot more free, and it's quicker to learn. There's a lot more developers out there for it, and it because it's not as locked down as Angular is in terms of opinions. So Angular is very, very opinionated in how it expects you to develop an application. React is much less opinionated, and therefore it seems to be more flexible. So people tend to be able to say, oh, well, for this particular project, I'm going to be using this or this or this, and it sort of it feeds into that dynamic, agile sort of approach that businesses prefer.
Sorry to interrupt you there. So do you feel that React's more cost effective than other JavaScript frameworks?
So that's I'm going to have to do a slight cop out on that one. Say it depends. I think it's close. I think if you look at a long enough time period, I think you'll probably find that it's possible that Angular is more cost effective over a longer time period, and that's only because but that's based off like a few variables. But the primary thing is it takes a while for choosing Angular to pay off, whereas React can pay off very quickly.
Yeah.
So React, I can jump into an IDE, I can knock out a simple CRUD front end, and in React far quicker than I could in Angular. But that's not to say that the code in React would be tons better. Like, it would be okay because I'm quite experienced with Angular, but if you asked a beginner React guy to do the same thing, and then you asked a beginner Angular guy to do the same thing, it would take the beginner Angular guy much longer, I believe, from my own experience of Angular. But I think what you get out of Angular at the end of the day would need less work from other developers,
Okay.
But I do think that the way that business, especially software development business, goes at this moment, that there has to be that front loading of delivery. We want to deliver now, and we can't, we'll worry about the tech debt, we'll worry about the cost of maintenance later, and
yeah,
and oftentimes that pays off. because the churn of development is so quick that you'll probably throw away the first solution and do another one, rather than just keep maintaining the same thing for years.
I think another point of view from a recruitment, obviously, perspective is companies may be moving to React because there's more React developers on the market. I found 3 years ago there was a lot more Angular developers, and I think obviously building the team to produce the product, and obviously a hiring point of view, it's easier to hire more React developers as there is more on the market. Don't know if you agree with that from a point of view.
I totally agree with that, and it again plays into what I was saying about it being a lot quicker to learn than Angular, and the learning curve for React is much more shallow than anything with Angular. With Angular, you've got to memorize, for example, or at least understand the way the templates work, and how they interface with the code that you're writing, and it's very separate. With React, you're basically just writing HTML with bits of JavaScript in it.
Okay.
So it's a lot of the boot camps that you see around here, and the learn to code, get a career in coding. They're all based around React, because it's just the quickest way to get people trained up on something. Yeah. And as a result, there's loads more people around. But again, that means that the talent spectrum is all over the place. You've got to do things like coding interviews and technical tests to find out who exactly you're hiring.
Yeah. Is there anything else we're going to touch on with regards to why companies are moving to React that you may not have said in the first part?
I think one thing that's probably affected it, which has probably been done to death, is the big shift from Angular 1.6 to Angular 2 and beyond. I think that there is probably an element of people have been burnt before with Angular, and they don't want it to happen again. So I imagine everyone's familiar of what I'm talking about. But originally, Angular was considered, the only game in town, more or less. React was not as popular by a long shot. But Angular did a huge breaking change between Angular 1 and Angular 2, to the point where it was effectively a completely different framework.
From 2+, was it?
Yeah, it was. So 1.6, I think, was the last Angular JS, which we now retroactively call it Angular JS, and we call the new one Angular. I think that's retroactive. And that, I think, soured a lot of people's views. I think, for what it's worth, what they did was right. I have had to go back and try to write Angular 1.6 since, and it is painful. Now that we've got a more modern solution, and React has gone from strength to strength. They've released, you had Redux in the earlier days, has come in and given you this sort of state management system that everyone really enjoys using. Well, a lot of people enjoy using, certainly. And then we've had the hooks system come in to hugely simplify the rendering lifecycle and the just how you create components in the first place. Again, I've had to since go back and start using some components in an old project, and it's not pleasant knowing that hooks and functional components are there, but I'm not allowed to use them, and having to do everything with the life cycle methods in React and stuff. They are, but it was a non-breaking change. It was a big paradigm shift for React, but it didn't break stuff that came before. And I think that was important. People didn't feel probably let down, I guess, by Angular when they did that big shift.
Yeah, because they had to relearn the language again, pretty much.
Absolutely. And for a lot of people as well, that was their first introduction to TypeScript, which probably didn't help either. Because TypeScript is a great thing, don't get me wrong, but being forced to learn it whilst also learning something else that you already thought you knew. It kind of,
Yeah.
it's a bit of a triple whammy of pain, I guess.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Trusted Tech Talks with me, Aiden Pople, and Senior Contract Software Engineer, Liam Jones. If you've enjoyed listening to the discussion, make sure you follow Trusted Tech Talks on LinkedIn, Spotify, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss another episode. Additionally, you can reach out with any follow-up questions on the topic via LinkedIn or email.